Are you burnt out from the daily grind, the city life, the horns honking? Do you want to experience nature? Would you believe it if I told you that Los Angeles actually had some really amazing botanic gardens? Well, that's probably why you clicked on this video, and so that's what I'm going to show you here. Let's get started with number 4, the South Coast Botanic Gardens. It's a serene botanical oasis nestled in the Palos Verdes hills of Los Angeles County. This is about 20 miles south of downtown Los Angeles, but because it's near the coast, this is going to be one of the coolest gardens to visit on a hot day, as it can often be covered in a cool coastal fog on summer mornings. It's also one of the least crowded, so you can feel a bit more connected to nature here. Spanning 87 acres, this is the smallest garden on the list, home to over 2,500 species of plants from as far away as Australia, the Mediterranean, and southern Africa. And while it has some great manicured sections, much of the garden feels wild and rugged that I'd consider more suitable for a casual, although short, nature hike rather than something like a typical European garden that we'll see later on in the list. One of the most pretty parts of the garden is definitely the rose garden, right near the entrance that often hosts weddings or people taking wedding pictures. In addition to the natural hiking-like paths, there's also a paved ring road that wraps around the garden, and in addition to the plants that you'll see, there's also a variety of interesting art exhibits along the way. This is also one of the least expensive gardens on the list, with adult admission coming in at $15 and parking is free. Oh, and if you have a 4-legged member of your family, they occasionally have dog walking days too. Now, many of the gardens on the list, including this one, put on special displays for the holidays. My favorite really on the list is actually the one right here. Astra Lumina is what they call the holiday light show. It's held in November and December. It is a separately ticketed event, as it is at pretty much all these gardens, and they deck out a small portion of the garden in a spacey sci-fi kind of theme at night. If you do want to visit the garden in the day and then Astra Lumina at night, you do have to buy 2 separate tickets, one for the garden and one for the lights, and oh, they do charge for parking for Astra Lumina, but it is pretty cool, so I think it's worth it. And now on to number 3, the Los Angeles County Arboretum and Botanical Gardens, nestled in the San Gabriel Mountains. This one is located 16 miles northeast of downtown Los Angeles in the city of Arcadia. At 127 acres, this one is definitely bigger than South Coast Botanic Garden, but also much busier. Ticket prices are similar at $15 for adults at the time of this recording, and this is a much more traditional style botanic garden with mostly paved paths and well laid out signs and gardens. In addition to the great selection of plants also from around the world, the most unique things here are really the water features and the historic structures. The garden is centered around Baldwin Lake, complete with strolling paths and nice benches to admire the view here. Now, along the shores of the lake is the historic Queen Anne Cottage, originally built in the 1880s by Los Angeles land tycoon Elias Jackson Lucky Baldwin. You know this dude had a lot of money because he even had a really fancy doghouse built in the true Victorian style that our daughter really liked to play in. There's also some neat wildlife here, ducks that swim in the lake, some friendly squirrels running around, but most iconically are the wild peacock that roam the gardens. There's so many of them that they actually go about and roam around the neighborhoods too. So many, they've been here for so long, there's actually a breeding population of these peacock. They're so accustomed to people, you can get really close to them. Just be friendly and look, don't touch. They also put on a cool Christmas light show here too, called Lightscape LA. This one is much bigger than Astra Lumina and is much more traditional Christmassy themed, white, red, green light. Lots of fun for the whole family, but also really crowded. If you're planning to come to Lightscape LA, I'd recommend you try to get here right when it opens before the crowds descend. The second best botanic gardens in Los Angeles is Descanso Gardens, located 12 miles north of downtown Los Angeles in La Cañada Flint Ridge. It's situated on 150 acres, so this one's getting bigger than the previous 2. This garden describes itself as a botanical garden, living museum, and urban oasis. And while the previous 2 were run by the county, this one is a bit more of a private, non-profit garden. It's bigger than the LA Arboretum and has more places that you can lose yourself in nature. Originally, this was home to another wealthy Los Angelino, Elias Manchester Body. He bought this property in the 1930s, built up a lot of the garden. Once he retired in the 1950s and moved to San Diego, the estate was turned into a botanic garden open to the public. So this one has a bit more of a vibe of the backyard of somebody who really loved plants, although I mean, it is a really big backyard. One of my favorite spots in the garden is this area right here. It kind of has like this old Wild West theme with these reclining chairs that look out on this lake. Now, Canada is really known for their kind of like blue-green lakes. This lake is all covered in kind of this like green moss. I think it's pretty neat, especially right as the sun starts to go down and shines on the mossy pond. This one is the only one that has a legitimate ride in it. They've actually got a railroad. $5 a ride takes you around the garden. Pretty neat for the big kids and the little kids too. My second favorite thing about Descanso Gardens is all of the big trees and kind of woodedness of this garden means that on a hot day, this is a pretty good place to escape the heat because I'd say a good 50% of the main walking areas of Descanso Gardens are in the shade. Pretty nice. My third favorite thing in Descanso Gardens is the Japanese garden. While Huntington Gardens has a really neat Chinese garden, their Japanese garden I don't think is as good as this one. To me, this Japanese garden has the best kind of zen, peaceful feel of any of the Japanese gardens in Southern California. There's a nice kind of blue-roofed area here, koi ponds, bridges that go over it. The fourth thing I really like about Descanso Gardens is they have really great maps everywhere. Wherever you are, you know where you are and how big the park is, where you might also want to go. What I also love about Descanso Gardens, I feel like it's the most lovingly taken care of at like a micro level. Even this tree right here, they've held up with this, so you have a nice, great place to sit and enjoy the pond. Do you want to sit and enjoy the pond with me? Or do you want to sit and enjoy the pumpkin? Sit and enjoy the pumpkin. Descanso Gardens also has a couple really neat holiday events. If you're in the area around Halloween, they do a pretty good Halloween festivity. In 2023 it was called Carved. I tell you what it was called in 2023 because they seem to change the names of all of their holiday festivities every year. But if you want to see more of that, I've got a whole video that shows you more about their Halloween festivities. And they do a really awesome Christmas display as well. Those are separate ticketed events in addition to the gardens. Going to cost you more to go into the Halloween and the Christmas events, but they're both totally worth it. Do make sure to buy your tickets in advance for those because they sell out quite a ways ahead. You'll find links to those in the description. Oh, and if you don't want to pay like the extra price for the Halloween displays, if you come in the daytime during garden time, you won't get all the cool lighting effects and music, but you'll still get to see some of the Halloween and Christmas art. And the #1 best botanical garden in Los Angeles is the Huntington Library and Gardens. Why is it called Library and Gardens? Well, it was founded by Mr. Huntington, a very wealthy man. This was his house back in the day, and he founded a huge library with over 1 million, not just 1 million, 11 million items that like date 1,000 years old. But in addition to that library, which you can check out for your admission in here, there's tons of great gardens to see. This is the most luxurious and European traditional garden vibe. It is also the most expensive and the busiest, so do make sure to make a reservation ahead of time if you're planning to come here. And I think this is also the most fun if you've got kids because they've got a children's garden that our Curious Princess really enjoys playing around in their little tunnels and water play structures, and fun for everybody. Oh, and there's a big cafe too. If you're hungry, you can eat here. My favorite parts of this garden are the Chinese and the Japanese garden. The Chinese garden, much bigger than anywhere else in Southern California. It is a really impressive Chinese garden. There's its own like boba tea shop and a restaurant in the Chinese garden. View structures up on top. The Japanese garden has bonsai trees. It has cherry blossoms. It even has a house that they disassembled and brought here from Japan piece by piece. So make sure to get up on the hill to check out that house. Their hours are shorter than here at the garden. Now, this is also definitely the most developed garden where there's like a lot of buildings in addition to the plants and flowers and art throughout. They also have a really great afternoon tea. OC Girl has been here for that. You get like a 3-layer set of snacks and teas. You can easily spend a couple hours in there on a weekend. They say it's in the rose garden and it might evoke wonderful views of roses, but well, it's really inside and you can't see the roses all that much. But it's a great way to, you know, get yourself a little snack if you're spending a whole day here. Oh, and also a really unique part here is the conservatory, which is just behind the statue. Basically a greenhouse, but as soon as you walk inside, you feel like you're in the jungles of Singapore or Asia, where it's just so humid, but that's how they can grow these plants and really just feels like a super neat building. What's extra funny about being in this conservatory is you can hear crickets in the background. maybe this microphone's good enough to hear them, but when somebody commented on, like, you can hear crickets, one of the employees said, like, oh, there are actually no crickets in here. It's actually just an audio track to make it feel more naturalistic. You know what? And it works. Okay, Princess, now that it's the end of the video, what do you want to share with our fellow explorers?
Please like and subscribe.
And what about the grass?
The grass.